I'm your morning witch, and today is Tuesday, February 25th. So happy Tuesday. I'm happy because I have 5 out of 5 off. I just need to get the other 5 off because I don't usually wear fake nails. Like my daughter does my nails, but I don't wear the fake ones often. And I've got a bunch of little under nail bruising from them bending. It's fucking painful. Y'all that do it all the time, props to you. My fingers apparently are not meant for it. So, our message through the universe today has to do with expressiveness or lack thereof. And we're going to tie it into Mercury retrograde, which is coming up in a little over 2 weeks. So, this information will be very helpful come that time. So, facial expressions, body language, these are things that people use to help convey their emotions, their feelings, their mentality, where they're coming from, and a lot of different things in addition to their words, right? And a lot of people think that they know exactly what somebody else is thinking based on that body language or that expression when it doesn't go along with the words that are coming out of somebody's mouth. And sometimes that is completely accurate and sometimes it's not. And that's part of what we're going to talk about. When we look at somebody's facial expression and assume we know what it means, I'm going to say you're more than 50% of the time you are wrong when you think that's what's going on behind somebody's eyes, because without the words, without the anything, maybe they're trying not to say something. You know what I mean? Like, there's all sorts of reasons that people make facial expressions. There's also all sorts of reasons why people don't make facial expressions. So an expressionless face or a blank face, a lot of people are like, that person's a psychopath. No, there are a lot of cultures where the more expressive you are in your face, like the more impolite you are to the general public. If you've been watching me for any amount of time, you've probably noticed that I'm not like other content creators who smile through everything they say, and we're just, even if I am pretty love and light, which I am pretty love and light, I'm not always smiling, and I'm not always smiling, and I'm not always smiling through my life, even when I'm happy. And for the culture where I live in America, that's not how most people are. However, it is A, how I am. It is B, very possibly linked to neurodivergence, because if you know, neurodivergent people do not have the same expressiveness that non-neurodivergent people put out there, and they actually have a hard time reading the expressions of non-neurodivergent people. And I would imagine they probably have a hard time reading the expressions of other neurodivergent people, because just because two people are neurodivergent doesn't mean they're neurodivergent in the same way, right? So reading facial expressions is very biased and not as accurate as reading something like body language, right? Body language gives us more accurate, non-biased information, because most people, body language kind of is very similar for a lot of people, whereas facial expressions, yes, there are micro expressions that they kind of will look the same along the lines of a lot of people, but the generalized expressiveness of someone's face is very personal to that person. So when you, as an outsider, are looking in at that expressiveness and assuming you know what it means, you're very possibly wrong. And I said Mercury retrograde's coming up, is gonna help you with that. Mercury retrograde affects communication negatively. So if you are already making assumptiveness about expressions or the lack of expressions on people's faces during Mercury retrograde, that behavior is going to negatively or adversely affect your interactions even more than it does in a general standing. And let me just revert back to, because when people don't smile at everybody, it doesn't mean they're miserable. It doesn't mean they're unhappy. I actually learned that in a lot of Eastern European cultures, the smiling is reserved for like when you're at a party, when you're surrounded by friends or family, like close friends or family. You don't just like go out in the world and smile. That's something that you reserve for certain occasions. And my ancestors are from Eastern Europe, and I very much, you can tell when I'm forcing a smile. And I really try to be polite and give somebody a smile, but it usually actually looks like an awkward smile or a pained smile. And then somebody gets worried about me. They're like, oh, that girl, there's something wrong with her. Did you see that look? And it's just me trying to do what I think is the polite thing per what I am perceiving of you as what you expect from me, because in public, when people smile at you, they usually expect you to smile back. And people that I don't know, it's real hard for me to do that with. People that I do know, it's pretty hard for me to just smile back out of nowhere. Not because I don't like them, but because I don't walk around smiling. Again, if you're my viewer, you know I don't even do these videos smiling. Even when I'm like super happy about the information, I'm usually very animated. And sometimes, you know, you might see that, but my eyes are more expressive than my mouth is most of the time. And then, of course, I'm very expressive in my face in general because that's part of my personality. Part of the reason that I'm bringing this up is it's something that I was thinking about a lot, especially after I learned that from the heritage perspective, that's something that the people of the culture that my ancestors originate with, like, that's just how they are. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool, because like that's kind of how I am too. But also, my youngest daughter started telling me about a book last night that she read when she was in middle school, and it's about people, like, there was some kind of apocalypse, and there were people that lived above ground and people that lived underground. And the people that lived underground, they found expressiveness on the face to be incredibly unattractive. So people like me, I would be considered ugly because I may not smile a lot, but my face is very expressive. You know, I do the things. I'm like, you know. So in the underground culture, anyone with an expressive face would wear a mask so as to not offend all the other people in their society, right? And, you know, the baseline that she explained to me is that, like, the main character that is an underground person but wears a mask because she's a very expressive individual, she's actually was born in the above ground and somehow wound up being taken to the underground by her mother. My kid's a senior in high school, so she doesn't necessarily remember everything about this book that she read in middle school, but it went along with the conversation that she and I were having with her sister, and it goes along with the thought process of expressions are very personal. So even though we think we understand somebody else's facial expressions, that's coming from our own personal bias. And as we move closer and closer to Mercury retrograde, Mercury, I don't like the way I keep saying it so quickly, Mercury retrograde. The closer we move to that, the more the reading the expressions of other people based on our own line of thought versus their reason for expressing themselves that way, it's going to become more of a possible detriment or possibly negatively adversely affect your communication. So that's what I got this Tuesday. See y'all tomorrow.